Hello and welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and in this episode I'll be breaking down UFC Fight Night 126 in Austin, Texas. So first of all, this is not a Saturday card, it's a Sunday card. So unfortunately if you are from the UK and like me and you work Monday to Friday, the Sunday cards really do suck. But I'll probably watch until around the main card and then I'll definitely have to bail and go to sleep for work in the morning. But anyway, I've got four bets to break down for you. The card is really slim pickings though from a betting perspective, purely just because there's a lot of fights that are very close. There'll be some dog ugly fights as well. These sort of fights are always easy to pass on from the betting perspective, but there's also some really green fighters as well with quite wide odds too, which are always an easy pass as well. So I'll get onto that soon anyway. But moving straight into the fight breakdowns as always, I've got my bets listed. I'll break those down in full for you, tell you who I've bet and the price, etc. Anything else that I've not bet, I'll just quick fire off at the end. I'll tell you who I think is going to win, and I'll also tell you why I've passed on those fights as well. So moving straight into the first bet that I'll break down, it's the main event of the evening. We've got Donald Cowboy Cerrone against Yancy Medeiros, and it's a fight that I'm actually really looking forward. Well, I would really be looking forward to watching it if it was live. I'll probably end up finding out the result before I do get to watch the fight. But yeah, it's a good fight, and it also does it justice that it's 5 rounds as well, because it could potentially go into the championship rounds. Now, the bet straight away, I've got 2 units on Yancy Medeiros at plus 118. Sort of missed the line a little bit here. The line opened at about plus 120. It instantly went down to pick'em odds, and then I spotted William Hill with the bet boost. I think they had it at plus 110, and then the bet boost took it to plus 118. And I thought that was a really, really good line for Yancy. I really do fancy him in this spot. But then more lines came out in the US, and you know they were up to, I think the best you could get Yancy at one point was plus 148, which is, it's just bizarre for me how it's gone the other way, and I'll explain why. I think that Donald Cerrone is on a bit of a decline now. It's tough to be completely definitive here in saying that, because the last 3 fights he's lost, but he's lost to Jorge Masvidal, who's a top fighter. He's lost to Robbie Lawler, not the same Robbie Lawler that once was. That was Robbie Lawler's comeback fight, but after seeing Robbie Lawler against RDA, I know he messed his leg up, but he still put on a decent performance, and he didn't get finished either. So I do still think there's some life left in Robbie Lawler, so you can't really put too much stock into that. And then his last loss was to Darren Till, who's one of these up and coming, superstars, and he will achieve great things. And I just think that Donald Cerrone and Darren Till passed each other in opposite directions. So as Cerrone was coming on the decline, in my opinion, Darren Till definitely moving up in the world. They've just met each other as the passing, and the outcome, I think, proves that theory right. But I almost think it's pretty much the same scenario here with Yancy Medeiros. Now, Yancy Medeiros isn't Darren Till. He doesn't have Darren Till's size or stature, or even power. But I do think Yancy is moving on to better things. He's now moved up to the welterweight division. I watched an interview from the Seb show that I ended up putting on my website with Yancy Medeiros before his last fight against Cowboy Oliveira. And I'm sure, if I remember rightly, I'm sure Yancy was saying when he first started fighting, whether it be amateur or pro, I can't remember, but either way, when he first started fighting, he was fighting at light heavyweight, which is just crazy to even think that he was once at that sort of weight, and then he went into and then he was in the UFC as a lightweight, so it's a bit crazy. But moving up to welterweight, when I looked at him against Cowboy Oliveira, he did fill out a lot, and he did look a lot more natural. Yancy was saying before the fight that he didn't have to worry about a weight cut anymore. He might still have to shed a couple of pounds, but it's really nothing that concerns him anyway. So he can really stay sort of around the weight that he needs to be whilst training. And there's a lot of good things that's going on around Yancy at the minute. And then the main thing for me is the toughness and durability. So I were in his last fight against Cowboy Oliveira, I bet Cowboy Oliveira quite heavily. I had 4 units on him against Yancy, and as part of that tape, I was watching the Trinaldo fight, the Yancy Medeiros and Francisco Trinaldo, and Trinaldo was really putting it on Yancy. He couldn't put him away, he just could not finish him, and Cowboy Oliveira had exactly the same problems against him. He nearly knocked him out 2 or 3 times in that first round, and at the start of the second as well, he was really putting it on Yancy, but he just couldn't put him out. It's this Hawaiian toughness. And when I had Dan Levy from Half the Battle on the podcast a few months ago, we were talking about the Max Holloway and Jose Aldo fight, and he was saying the same thing about Max Holloway. The Hawaiian dudes are just really tough and they're really hard to put away. And I think straight away in a 5-round fight against Donald Cerrone, I like that about Yancy. The fact that I'm comfortable with him standing with Donald Cerrone, knowing that unless Donald Cerrone, hits a shot so hard that he's so uncontrollable that he does put Yancy completely stone cold out, Yancy isn't going to give up. He's never ever going to give up, and I love that about him. It's that physical and mental toughness that he's got. But then moving on to, like I say, the style of the fight, I think that primarily it's gonna be on the feet. I think at some point Donald Cerrone is gonna start shooting at Yancy, because I think Yancy's going to be the aggressor. I think Yancy's going to be the one pressing forward, putting the shots on Cerrone, just like Darren Till did. And, we saw Donald Cerrone start to shoot on Darren Till. But Yancy's really hard to take down. But if you do get him down, he's got good scrambles. If you get him down with his back to the mat, he can sweep. He can get to a position where he can stand back up. He's no slouch. And I don't think Cerrone's a slouch on the ground either, but there's something about Yancy. I just feel that no matter what position he's putting in this fight, wherever it goes, wherever Cerrone may have an advantage, I just think Yancy's going to have an answer for that. And again, I keep going back to the Darren Till fight and Darren Till and Cerrone fight because it's relevant. When we saw Darren Till really start to stuff Cerrone's shots and have an answer for whatever Cerrone was throwing at him, you could see it in Cerrone. You could literally tell in his body language and in his facial expressions. You could see him mentally deteriorating through that fight, just in his head, just knowing that he's running out of options. And it got to a point where he just had his back against the cage and really not doing anything and just letting Darren Till tee off on him, and obviously then Till getting the TKO victory. And I just see a similar thing here. I think that Cerrone might come out and try and put it on Medeiros. I think Medeiros will walk through it. I think he'll take the shots. He'll start landing in exchanges on Cerrone. If he gets into a brawl, I'll love that because Yancy won't get knocked out. And then if Cerrone starts shooting, I think Yancy can stuff the shots. If he doesn't stuff the shot and Cerrone does partially get him down, I think Yancy can scramble out of it. If it is a good entry and it is a good takedown and he does get his back on the mat, I think Yancy might not be able to sweep him. I think Cerrone might be a bit too savvy for that, but he can definitely make his way back up to his feet for sure. And if he does get taken down once he's back up to his feet, that is going to demoralise Cerrone in a similar way that what happened to him with the Darren Till fight. And I just really see Cerrone crumbling under the pressure here. I think that Yancy is going to have to get through a little bit of adversity, maybe in the first round, but Yancy will figure him out, and he did exactly the same thing with Cowboy Oliveira in his last fight. Eventually he figured him out and he pulled through. Cowboy started to decline in regards to his gas tank. Emptied his gas tank out. I think Cerrone's got a better gas tank, but if he hurts Yancy and he really starts putting it on him, trying to finish him, and he doesn't put him out, there's just so many different variables in this fight. But I ultimately think they all point to a Yancy Medeiros win, and at plus money, I just think it's really good value. So just to finalise that, I think Yancy Medeiros is going to have to maybe defend a few takedowns to, in that first round, maybe early in the second round. I think that he does defend takedowns, or he does get back up to his feet. I think that he'll start pushing Cerrone backwards. I think he'll be the aggressor. He'll start hitting him with shots that will force Cerrone. And I think once Cerrone's back is against the cage, and Yancy's landing shots on him, I think he'll mentally quit again. And I can see Yancy getting a TKO victory late in the second, maybe early third round. So yeah, Yancy Medeiros by TKO. I've got 2 units on that at plus 118. So moving on to the next bet, and it's in the co-main event of the evening. We've got Derrick Lewis versus Marcin Tybura. I've got 2.5 units on Marcin Tybura at minus 111. That line's now about minus 140, 150. So I really hit that line nice and early. Credit to Betfair for having those lines out, and at a really, no pun intended, fair price. So yeah, I think that Marcin Tybura, I do think people, and I do agree with people saying that he's a little overrated. I do agree with that to an extent. I think people do tend to think that he's better than what he actually is, but by no means is he a bad fighter. And he's a heavyweight fighter. He's never been knocked out. So I just think he's a solid dude, and he's been on the regional scene as well, and he's been put in there against some beasts of Eastern European heavyweights. And like I say, to come out of that unscathed in regards to not actually getting knocked out is quite an achievement at heavyweight, because trust me, he has fought some monsters on that regional scene. And he's fighting another monster in Derrick Lewis right here, but I don't think it's the same monster that we know. I think Derrick Lewis, even though I'm pretty sure these guys are the same age, if not, there might be a year or two difference in it, which is nothing. But I think Derrick Lewis potentially could be at the end of his career, and the reason I say that is because he did retire momentarily, and after his last loss against Mark Hunt, due to the repetitive back problems that he's had. He had to pull out of a fight against Verdum because of that back problem on the night of the fight as well, which really sucked. But then Walt Harris stepped in to fight Verdum, who was also on the card. And so I just think that Derrick Lewis has got these physical issues with his body, and if he has genuinely got back problems that he's fighting through it just makes me wonder what sort of training camp he's having if he's hurting, or if he's constantly hurting. He might not be able to do certain things or train in a certain way, and it just makes me think what's he going to look like coming on fight night against a guy that is smaller than him in regards to weight, but a guy that's going to be fast, that's going to have quick striking, that is going to be sharp. And you look at Tybura's last fight against Verdum, he lost. Arguably, I think some judges scored at 50-45. It was a 5-round fight, so they scored all rounds to Verdum. But you watch that fight back, and it doesn't really tell the full story. Yes, Verdum did beat him comfortably, but that's Verdum, and Verdum's one of the best in the world. But Marcin Tybura hung with him, and he rocked him a couple of times as well. So you just think, what's that fighter going to do against a fighter that could potentially be hurt with a repetitive back injury, that might not be training properly either? And you go back to the Mark Hunt fight, and that fight was really, really poor. It was, I don't like to say it, but it was really pathetic in a way. It was almost like, whilst I was watching it live, it was almost like both fighters respected their punching power, respected the opponent's punching power a little bit too much, and they didn't want to engage because they both thought that one punch could put them out. But actually, now it's mentioned that Derrick Lewis had this potential problem with his back. It sort of makes sense why he was a bit lethargic. And from Hunt's point of view, Hunt didn't really have to do anything special. Derrick Lewis was just walking backwards, not really throwing anything, not really doing anything, not moving. So in Mark Hunt's head, he must have thought, well, why overwork? I can beat this guy just by chilling out and taking it at my own pace, which he did. He won by TKO, which is another point. Derrick Lewis gassed himself out hard, and he didn't do anything. He didn't do I can't say a single thing. He was throwing the odd shot, but he didn't he didn't fight with any sort of intensity in that fight, yet he gassed himself out so hard that the referee stopped it, stood up when Mark Hunt was hitting him with a few tippy-tappy shots. And I say tippy-tappy, one of those shots will probably put me straight out, but, from a fighter's perspective, they weren't, it wasn't Mark Hunt throwing bombs, let's say. So, all this is surrounding Derrick Lewis physically. Now, from a style point of view, Derrick Lewis tends to lose fights early, but then win in the later rounds. And I know he's won a couple of his fights that have been 5 rounds quite late on in the fight. So the Shamil Abdurakhimov fight, he was getting beat. He was getting beat for 4 rounds, and then he ended up getting 1 takedown in I think it was mid to late 4th round, and he ended up mounting Shamil. I think it was a mount, but anyway, he ended up ground and pounding him out. So he was losing 4 rounds before he decided to win the fight. Now this is only a 3-round fight, so he can't do that. He hasn't got the time, and he hasn't got he hasn't got the 5 rounds to take his time and potentially throw away rounds. You can't be throwing away rounds like that in a 3-round fight. 5 rounds you can get away with it because you've got a couple of rounds to throw away, and then 3 rounds to really step it up where anything can happen. But in a 3-round fight, if you throw 1 round away, you're fighting an uphill battle, and I'm just not sure if we even see that Derrick Lewis anyway. He was getting beat by Travis Browne, who was completely shot. Travis Browne was... Oh man, he must have been 1 body kick away, or maybe 2 body kicks away from Derrick Lewis dropping and the referee having to stop that fight. Literally, it was that close. The margins were that fine. And he managed to catch a kick from Travis Browne, I think it was. Took him down, ground and pounded him out. It's those sort of margins where he's fighting fighters that aren't great. Shamil Abdurakhimov's not great. Travis Browne isn't great. Mark Hunt's not the same as he used to be. And he's putting in all these, substandard lethargic performances. And I just think someone like Tybura, who is still quick, he's in the prime of his career. I'm not saying he's the best fighter in the UFC heavyweight division, but this is the best Tybura that I think we're ever going to see right now. Just come off a 5-round fight with Verdum. Yeah, he started to gas towards the end, but it's a 5-round fight at heavyweight. Verdum started to gas a little bit as well, but he's got the stamina. If he doesn't punch himself out like he did against Andrei Arlovski, he's got the stamina to go 3 rounds solid with Derrick Lewis. Whereas I don't think Derrick Lewis has got that cardio, that gas tank, and the physical toughness and durability that he needs to fight against someone like Marcin Tybura. I think Derrick Lewis might try and take Tybura down, maybe, if he's, like I say, if he's physically capable of it. But then Tybura's got good takedown defence. Verdum tried taking him down a couple of times, he stuffed them. Even tried taking Verdum down himself, he took Arlovski down. There's a possibility he takes Derrick Lewis down, because Derrick Lewis is going to be like a fish out of water on his back. I don't think that, yeah, he's big and he's strong, but I think if he's got... And I keep saying it, but if he's got these back problems and Tybura gets him down, how is he going to stand back up? It could be quite a simple fight, this, for Tybura. Ultimately, I think that Tybura does keep it standing. I think he does defend some takedowns at some point, maybe, if Derrick Lewis decides to take him down. I do think Derrick Lewis will be the aggressor. I don't mean like really badly, like charging at him like a bull, because I just don't think that we see that Derrick Lewis anymore. But I think Tybura will strike well moving backwards, and he did it against Verdum. It's just Verdum he's just a much better striker, a much better fighter than Tybura, and it showed. But Derrick Lewis isn't Verdum, so I think Tybura will happily strike moving backwards and land the more shots. Ultimately, I think that Tybura is going to land one of these left head kicks on Derrick Lewis. He's not Vick to pester out with that. He's knocked other fighters in the regional scene out like that. He wobbled Verdum in the 4th or 5th round, I think it was, with that same head kick. It's nasty and it's quick, and you don't, he sets it up well. He telegraphs it perfectly. You don't see it coming. It's just really quick, really hidden, and I think that he's going to catch Derrick Lewis with with that head kick. I think he's going to wobble Derrick Lewis. I don't think he'll flash knock him out, but I think when Derrick Lewis wobbles, he'll get the old stanky leg going on, be moving backwards, and then I just think it'll be Tybura's fight that'll finish him off, and I think that's exactly what will happen. Like I say, just to reiterate, Tybura just moving backwards with Derrick Lewis moving slowly forwards at him. Derrick Lewis will be swinging, looking for the one bomb. Tybura will be smart, savvy about it. I think he'll just pick it in with leg kicks, jabs, short 1-2s, and then bang, that head kick will come. He'll catch him clean, wobble him, and then he'll follow up with a couple of punches, drop him, and then I think the referee will split it up. So yeah, I've got Tybura 2.5 units at -111. So the next bet is the next fight before that. Sorry, we've got James Vick against Francisco Trinaldo. Now I've gone a small bet. I've gone 1 unit for Francisco Trinaldo at +200. Now it's not going to be a straightforward fight, and I don't think Vick's a bad fighter, but there's a few reasons why I bet this and why I've bet the amount that I have, and I'll explain all. So first of all, first of all, James Vick is a striker. He's a huge lightweight in regards to his height. I think he's 6'3". He's got big reach. He towers over everybody in that division. Honestly, I've got no idea how someone at 6'3" manages to cut down to lightweight, but he does it, and he does it healthily. He doesn't tend to gas. Credit to James Vick. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And it's a massive advantage for him. Now, on the other hand, we've got Francisco Trinaldo, who's 5'9". So there's a massive difference in height here. It'll be visibly different. We'll see. You'll basically completely see and understand the difference in the fight, in the height and the reach. So you've got James Vick, that's a striker, boxing background, golden gloves in boxing. He's got a submission game. His ground game I don't think is entirely great. Then you move over to Francisco Trinaldo. He's a black belt in kickboxing. It's decent kickboxing. It's not the best, but it's definitely good enough, in my opinion, to hang with Vick for short periods of time, which will be key. And I'll move on to that very soon. But then Trinaldo's game is this grindy style. He loves to close distance, get in, get his hands on physically on his opponent against the cage, ragdoll them, throw them down to the mat, trip them. He's got heavy top control. He's got good jiu-jitsu. So there's the two styles. Now, the reason, well, first of all, I think the odds are completely off. I do agree that Vick should be favourite. Vick's just put away Duffy. He's also looked good against Marco Polo Reyes. He finished him as well. But what really makes Vick flourish in these fights is fighting somebody that is going to be happy to trade with him, that isn't going to be consistently looking to get the fight to the mat. Vick doesn't have to worry about defending takedowns. He can really let his hands go, and that's really where you see Vick flourish. Like, he's really, really good. But in this fight with Trinaldo, I'm 99.9% sure that Trinaldo is not going to want to stay at distance with Vick, and that's the reason why I bet Trinaldo. And I'm pretty confident that I know exactly what he's going to try to do in this fight, because if he doesn't do that, A, he's stupid, and B, he's going to get knocked out. So if I know that as an outsider looking in, he's going to know that, and his team's going to know that. Now, his style also is Vick's worst nightmare, in my opinion. That grindy style is something that Vick is going to have trouble with. And you might say, oh, how do you know that? You could be guessing. Well, if you go back to the Glaico-Franca fight, I know it was a while ago, but Vick was repeatedly put on his back by Franca. It's just Franca couldn't hold him down. He didn't have that good top game, that top side game. He's got decent jiu-jitsu, but he ultimately just couldn't keep Vick down. He didn't do enough to keep him down. He didn't control him on the floor, and it just allowed Vick to keep standing up. But then he just kept on getting takedowns. I think, off the top of my head, without looking at stats, I think it was about 6 takedowns that he got on James Vick. Now, like I said before, Vick's really good when he's striking, when someone will trade with him, because he can get his distance, he can get his reach going, he can really get his game going. But someone that's going to want to press you, get a hold of you physically, get his arms around you, try and ragdoll you and put you to the mat, I think that's going to make James Vick a bit uncomfortable, and that's where I think that the odds are off. So this is why I bet it, because even though my biggest worry is James Vick's height and reach, it's also it also makes me confident in what we're potentially going to be seeing from Trinaldo in regards to him not wanting to stay on the outside, him physically wanting to get in Vick's face and do what he does best. In previous fights, Trinaldo trusts his kickboxing a little bit too much, and he can be a little bit hittable because he's staying on the outside trying to strike with people where he could easily just go in, grab a hold of him, throw him to the mat and win a fight. But, credit to him, he doesn't always want to be boring. He wants to strike, he wants to have a fight, and that's fair enough. But in this fight, he doesn't have that option. So then you look towards records. Trinaldo's been in there with some of the best, some of the best in the division. He's a savvy vet. Yeah, he's lost a couple, of course he has, but he's one of these fighters that you can just trust, that even though he has lost some fights, you can trust that he'll always put in a solid performance. You never watch Trinaldo and think, yeah, Trinaldo's off tonight, he's having a bit of an off night. He's not. When he gets beat because his opponent's genuinely better than him and put in a good performance themselves. It's not because Trinaldo's poor. You never really see a bad performance out of him now. I know he's old, I know he's getting on, but just like when you look at Yoel Romero, even though the dudes are old, they're not showing signs of that sort of age in the fight game. So, like I say, I think Trinaldo might be 39, 40, but he doesn't fight like your average 39, 40-year-old. He's still got a lot to give, in my opinion. He's still got a few years left fighting. He'll never be in the mix for a title shot. I think that's gone, but definitely he can hold his own against the sort of top end of the top 15, the bottom end of the top 15, and anybody unranked as well. He'll definitely be able to hold his own against them, and that is what James Vick is now. James Vick could keep him on the outside. He could move out of the way of Trinaldo trying to cut angles and things like that, and he could win the fight. He could knock Trinaldo out, but I just trust. There's something about this spot. I just trust Trinaldo in because I know what he's going to want to do, and what he wants to do is what he's best at, and what he's best at is what James Vick is going to struggle most with. That sort of style going forward. So based on that, and I'm getting plus 200, 2-1, I had to take the shot. Now it's only one unit because I do see a path to victory for James Vick. I do think that there's a possibility he could win, but I just really favour Trinaldo in this spot, and with it being 2-1 plus 200, I don't need to make a big bet for big results. There's no point me sitting here thinking, I'll throw 2 or 3 units at this, because if it wins I'll make so much profit and it'll look great on my record. No, it's not about that. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. This betting game, it's a long-term game, and there's no point in me throwing a lot of money when I can win 2 units off 1 unit. That's awesome. I'll take that every day of the week. So that's why it's 1 unit. Ultimately, I think what happens is Trinaldo early on presses. I think he does get inside. I think he does get a hold of Vick. I think he'll run the clock down a little bit in clinch, wear Vick out, take him down. Vick might get up, he'll take him down again. I think he can enjoy some success on top. I think he can do that for 2 rounds. I think the 3rd round will be interesting depending on how much Vick's made him work over that first 2 rounds. If he's made him work a lot, I could see the last round being a bit of a sweat fest, in regards to watching my bet potentially come in, or with Vick really putting the pressure on. Ultimately, I think Trinaldo survives. I don't think he'll gas himself out that much where he physically can't do anything in that last round. I think he'll just about survive that last round, and yeah, I think he wins a 29-28 decision. So moving on to the final full breakdown, we've got Jared Flash Gordon against Carlos Diego Ferreira. Now, before the lines came out, I didn't watch tape on this because I leaned Jared Gordon pre-tape. Didn't really know too much about Ferreira. I just automatically leaned Gordon because he's on a bit of a roll. He's looking great. Putting on some good solid performances, and like I say, ultimately just looking really good. So I did lean Jared Gordon, but I said to myself that if it's around the minus 150 mark, because listen, Ferreira's got a great record, and his only 2 losses have come to Dustin Poirier and Beneil Dariush, and the Dariush fight was mega close. Poirier knocked him out, but it is what it is. He knocks a lot of people out. So at this point I thought, well, it must be a close fight, just looking at the record of Ferreira and then knowing about Jared Gordon. I thought minus 150 out for Gordon, I'll run the tape, and just to make sure that I'm okay betting Gordon. I'll never bet a fight that I'm unsure of without watching tape. So lines came out minus 185. So I'm thinking, okay, it's not too far away. I would prefer it a little bit closer. Just see where the line goes. A couple of other books released lines, and then I woke up this morning and Jared Gordon's like minus 250, minus 270 in places, and it's just like completely steamed. So at this point, I'm looking at Ferreira's line. I'm thinking, okay, well, plus 200. Let's have a look at. Let's do a bit of digging. So I did a bit of digging, and one of the first things that stood out to me is a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, just digressing a little bit here, and I'll tell you where I stand with this black belt situation in the UFC. I don't fully buy into it. Not for everybody. And the reason being is everybody seems to be a black belt when they're in the UFC under whatever master. Now, for me personally, I think that black belts are given out a little too softly, a little too frequently, and a little too easily. I think I could be completely wrong with this, but I think the black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu should take you anywhere between 7 and 10 years if it's done in the right way. And again, if I'm right, I'm sure it's around that sort of mark. So some of these UFC fighters are getting black belts after like a couple of years, and it's a bit like, okay, now you're just trying to accolade your fighter up and really sell him as a black belt when he's probably not a black belt. And it's got that bad where I actually start to trust the brown belts a little bit more, because if they're in the UFC and they're a brown belt, they must be following the right steps correctly, because they've obviously got a trainer that's saying, listen, I don't care if you're in the UFC, I'm not giving you a black belt until you're ready for a black belt. And I respect that a lot more. However, there becomes a line when you actually see a black belt that's genuinely sick on the mat and sick at grappling. But then you get to your 2nd degrees, your 3rd degrees, and your 4th degree black belts. And I've stopped at 4th degree there because there's only one person at 4th degree in the UFC, and that's Damian Maia, as you could probably appreciate. There's a few 3rd degrees, like you've got your Verdums, your Rafael Dos Anjoses. So then you've got your 2nd degrees like Michel Pereira's. When you get to that 2nd degree black belt and the 3rd degree and the 4th degree, that is serious fucking grappling. And I mean serious grappling. You don't just get a 2nd degree or a 3rd degree or a 4th degree black belt if you're not absolutely outrageously good at jiu-jitsu. So the first thing that stood out to me was Ferreira was a 3rd degree black belt, which, like I said, it is serious. So instantly I'm thinking, holy shit, this guy is going to be amazing at grappling. And I'd not really seen this guy fight before, so I couldn't really put too much stock into, too much thought into him as an overall fighter. So I thought, well, if his boxing's okay, or if his stand-up is okay, he could potentially be a bit of a nightmare for Jared Gordon. So I ran the tape. And the tape that I watched him against Ramsey Nijem, I watched him against Dustin Poirier, I watched him against Beneil Dariush, I watched him against Olivier Aubin Mercier, and this is what I found out about him. His counter striking's great. When fighters are coming forward at him, he doesn't panic. He's got a good lead counter left hook, similar to what Dan Hardy used to throw. He's just he's a good stand-up striker. He doesn't mind trading. He doesn't mind like getting into a bit of a war. He's got a really good chin. Yes, Ferreira knocked him out, but he dropped him twice before he knocked him out. Eventually, that just came. Poirier's got good power, but he was taking shots, like real hard shots off a lot of the people he was fighting, and his chin's good. And like I say, he moves back really well, strikes really well moving backwards. When he gets taken down, he sweeps, old school sweeping, straight away looking for a submission. But then you see times where he's looking for a submission, he thinks, shit, this isn't working, I'm not in the right position. And then he uses that to stand up. He stands up brilliantly. His scrambles are good as well. He really made Aubin Mercier look a bit daft on the mat. Aubin Mercier took him down, he swept him into mount. He made him look daft, and Aubin Mercier's got really good grappling. Like, again, I think he might be brown belt himself, but that's really good grappling. So I'm just thinking, well, Jared Gordon's game is pressure fighting, coming forward fast, throwing heat. When he's thrown so much heat and come forward so fast and the back's against the cage, he'll clinch up, he'll take them down, he'll use his ground and pound. And instantly I'm thinking, well, all these things that Jared Gordon does, Ferreira answers them perfectly. Jared Gordon comes forward well, Ferreira moves back well. Jared Gordon is quite hittable as well when he's throwing shots. Well, Ferreira will counter that. Jared Gordon even dares to clinch up with him and take him down. That is going to be a bad move, because yes, Gordon's good on top, but this guy's a 3rd degree black belt. He's not going to be able to sit in top control. So I think Gordon knows that. So instantly, if Gordon does know that and he doesn't want to know on the ground, which he'd be wise to do, that instantly takes away some of Gordon's game. So now Gordon's just left with his striking. Now what does he do with just his striking when he doesn't have this clinch and wrestling game to back it up with? I've got no idea. But even if it stays striking, I wouldn't be surprised if Ferreira outpointed him. He hasn't got Gordon hasn't got the best gas tank against Hacker and Diaz. Hacker and Diaz gassed ridiculously hard, where he could barely even stand up in the 3rd round. But what you didn't see, because of how bad Hacker and Diaz looked, is how tired Gordon was as well. It's just Gordon looked fresh compared to what Diaz looked like. The one thing that does worry me here is Ferreira got popped a couple of years ago by USADA, and he's had a couple of years layoff. So what's he going to look like after that? But listen, he's not been in loads of wars before that. He was never the type of fighter that would use PEDs to aid a weight cut, but still be quite heavy and be quite big. I don't think he ever cut too much weight. So I'm not sure if it actually affects him that much. But even if it does have a little effect on him, I think he's got a size advantage over Gordon anyway. So I just think, as much as I like Jared Gordon, I just think this is a bad stylistic fight for him. And to be honest with you, this is the beauty of watching tape, because I started watching the Ferreira tape and I was like, holy shit, this guy's legit. Like, Gordon's in for a fight on the weekend for sure. Now you're thinking, well, tell me what are the odds? Well, currently I can get plus 202 for Ferreira, which is, honestly, it's not often that I'm genuinely shocked by a fighter's line, but I'm genuinely shocked by Ferreira's line. And if you've not watched, if you listen to this podcast and you've not watched the heavy tape on Ferreira, and you're thinking to yourself, oh well, Gordon's great, look at what he's done in his last few fights, go and watch the tape on Ferreira. Also take into consideration that Gordon's last fight against Hacker and Diaz is on his way out. He has been in wars. He's been around for years and years. And then he's coming against a fresh Jared Gordon. He couldn't even stand up in the 3rd round. He was that gassed. Then you look at Gordon's fight before that, which was his first in UFC, Michel Quinones, that Sage Northcutt, also on this card by the way. Sage Northcutt made him look absolutely shit. no disrespect, but Michelle Quinones really isn't UFC caliber. So how much stock can you put into Jared Gordon's 2 wins in the UFC? But I tell you what, we'll see how much stock we can put into it after Sunday night, because I think he's got a big problem that's going to be at the opposite end of the cage for him. So I think that Gordon comes out strong, fast. I think Ferreira will counter-strike really well. I think it'll really make Gordon think, shit, okay, this isn't going to be as straightforward as my last 2 fights. I think it is going to be a bit of a scrap that first round. I think that Ferreira can box him up moving backwards. I think there will be moments in the fight where Jared Gordon's having a bit of success, but ultimately I don't see Gordon trying to take him down, because I can't understand why his corner would even advise that, knowing what Ferreira's like on the mat. Alternatively, Ferreira doesn't really pursue takedowns too much. He does look for the opportunist trip takedown. Maybe he gets one of them. But I think even standing, I think Ferreira can just outland him. Just outland the dude over 3 rounds. I think that they'll both start to tire with the pace of the fight. I think Gordon might tire a little bit more, but then I can't be 100% sure in that because of this 2-year layoff, but I don't think that has too much of effect anyway. Ultimately, I think that unless this mat hits the floor, I think Ferreira can outpoint him and win a 29-28 decision. If the mat hits the floor, either Ferreira's going to win a 30-27 if he can get him down often, or he's just going to submit him because he's genuinely that good. Ultimately, I'm going to go with a 29-28 decision. I don't think Gordon tries to take it to the ground. I think he's smarter than that. Like I said, Ferreira doesn't really press for takedowns too much. He does look for the opportunist trip takedown, but I'm not sure that opportunity arises against Gordon. I just think it's turned into a bit of a boxing match. I think it'll turn into a bit of a firefight. I think that Ferreira's boxing will let him get the better of the trading shots between them both, and I think he'll strike his way to a 29-28 decision. So I haven't bet it yet. Like I said, it's at plus 200 over in England, but there's a couple of places in America that have got it at like plus 220 and plus 215. So yeah, maybe being a bit greedy right now, but I know for a fact that there's a couple of books in the UK that have the plus 200 that won't change very quickly. And I know that I'm a decent reader of line movement over in the UK because of the effects that we get from the US markets. So I know I've got plus 200 and I'm happy with that, but I think the second it gets to 210, I think I'll put a bet on. And again, like the Trinaldo bet, it's only going to be a 1 unit bet, just because, listen, why do I have to put a big bet on? I don't need to be putting 2 or 3 units on something that's plus 200. I said it a minute ago, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's a long-term game, and yeah, I don't need it to be a big bet. I'll be taking at least 2 units profit from a 1 unit stake if he wins. So yeah, it'll be 1 unit at roughly around the plus 200 mark, plus 210 if I'm lucky. And that does it for the full breakdown. So straight into the quick fire round. I'll not spend too long on this. The first quick fire fight, we've got Thiago Alves against Curtis Millender. Don't know too much about Millender. I've watched a few highlight reels, a couple of clips of him. He looks quite a flashy striker. Ultimately, I think that flashy striker is going to come into the UFC on his debut against a vet who's got all the fundamentals and a bit of a ground game as well. And the pick's going to be Thiago Alves. I think fundamentals beats flash, especially on the debut. You know, I think they're going to come in and really run riot on a vet with some flashy stuff, and then you see it all the time. Thiago Alves isn't a bad line either. It's like minus 160, I think, which is a great line in my opinion for this fight. If it goes obviously the way that I think it's going to go. I think Alves will win a decision. Ultimately, I've passed because there's just not enough tape on Millender for me to what. I couldn't find enough tape anyway for me to make a solid decision on whether Alves is gonna win or not. So ultimately, I've had to pass. But you know, we'll see, and whatever I see from Curtis Millender will be in the memory bank for his next fight. So, yeah, I've got Thiago Alves by decision. And then we've got Steven Peterson versus Brandon Davis. Don't really know too much about Steven Peterson. Again, I've seen a few clips and things like that. It looks a bit of a wild, exciting fighter, which is good stuff. It's going to be good watching. Against Brandon Davis, who's just come off a close decision loss to Kyle Bochniak, and I don't think Bochniak's as bad as some people make out. So Brandon Davis is going to be my pick by decision. I think that he's already been in the UFC, he's already experienced that debut and those jitters that come with it and the nerves. I think he'll just be a lot more calmer on the night. I think he'll be Stephen Peterson. I think it'll be a comfortable decision. The next we've got Sage Northcutt against Thibault Gouti. Thibault Gouti absolutely awful. I don't rate him as a fighter at all. His last win was against Andrew Holbrook, which was a knockout, but Andrew Holbrook's now shown that he's not anywhere near UFC quality either. Sage Northcutt, never been that great, still very green, but the move off to Team Alpha Male looks like it's improved him, but then his last win was very dominant, but it was against Michel Quinones, which I spoke about a minute ago in the Jared Gordon breakdown. Don't think Michel Quinones is that good or UFC quality either, so how much has Northcutt improved? Well, we're not sure, but still, I think that he's fighting someone in Gouti that is probably on the level of Quinones, so I do think he wins. The reason I've passed on this, as I mentioned earlier, right in the introduction of this podcast, that there's some green fighters with wide odds. Sage Northcutt's worse than minus 300 now. In my opinion, I just wouldn't. It'd take a pretty dominant fighter for me to bet someone at minus 300, because what you've actually got to put down as a stake, you're not going to return much in it, and it's sort of not worth the risk because it's MMA and anything can happen. But then when you add into the fact that Sage Northcutt actually isn't that great, is really green, and was once a hype train that's faded off, and still we're not sure what his future holds for him. I don't know how you can be laying down minus 300 on him, but for what it's worth, I think he wins. I think anybody that bets him, I think they'll cash the bet. But for me, it's just not worth the reward's not worth the risk, and that's my personal preference. That's my strategy. That's my game, and it's how I bet. Everybody's different. Everybody has those different strategies. So if you have bet Sage Northcutt, good luck, and I think it'll cash anyway. So I'm sure you'll be all right. I think he wins a decision for what it's worth. I think a 30-27 decision. Then we've got Brian Camozzi and Geoffrey Neal. My pick's Geoffrey Neal here. I don't really know too much about both of these guys. I've seen bits of them. Brian Camozzi, ultimately, I don't think it's UFC quality either. Geoffrey Neal's okay. I'm sure he's from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series as well, where he's knocked someone out. He's got a few knockouts on his record as well. Ultimately, I think he'll knock Brian Camozzi out inside 3 rounds. I'm not sure when or how it comes about. I just don't trust Brian Camozzi, and I think Geoffrey Neal's going to have enough to beat a jobber, someone that's not great. So yeah, Geoffrey Neal by TKO. Then we've got an interesting fight with Roberto Sanchez and Joby Sanchez. So Roberto Sanchez coming off that loss against Joseph Morales. I don't think I bet Roberto Sanchez in that fight, but I picked him. I was quite, heavily leaning him. I'm surprised I didn't bet it. He's got good takedowns, good wrestling. Stand-up's not the best, and I was actually looking to him for maybe a bet in this fight. And then I watched tape on Joby Sanchez, and Joby Sanchez has got the striking that Roberto Sanchez hasn't got, and he's also got a good ground game as well, good takedowns, good scramble, good get-up game. So ultimately, I can't now bet Roberto Sanchez, but then on the flip side, I haven't seen enough on Joby Sanchez to bet him either, even though the lines are close. So it's a pass, and I'll enjoy watching this fight. I think there'll be some good grappling exchange. I think it'll be a fun fight to watch. My pick's Joby Sanchez to win by submission. Then we've got Sarah Moras against Lucie Pudilova. Sarah Moras, I'm not going to call her an armbar specialist, but that's what she likes to go for. She likes the armbars. Don't really do much more than that. I don't think she's that solid on her feet. Pudilova's not actually that good either, but she's better on her feet. I think Sarah Moras will go for a few takedowns. I'm not sure that she completes the takedowns. I think Pudilova can keep it standing. I think Pudilova outstrike her. I think she'll win a 30-27 decision. Then we've got Alex Morono against Josh Burkman. Josh Burkman, I can't even believe he's got another fight. So old, his record's shocking now. I really don't know how much he's got left to give or how much he can take from the fights inside the octagon. I'm pretty sure this is his last fight on his contract, so maybe this is why he's got one more. So it could be his retirement fight, or at least his exit fight from the UFC anyway. And I think he loses. I'm not hugely high on Alex Morono, but like I've said in a previous podcast, I think it's when I bet Nico Price. If you're betting Alex Morono, even though he's not that good himself, I wouldn't worry about it too much in this position, because it doesn't matter if you fight, how bad your fighter is that you're betting on. He's just got to be better than his opponent, and I think that's it was a prime case of Nico Price and George Sullivan. And it's the same sort of case here, and it's also the same sort of line around the -225, 230 mark for Alex Morono. Not a bet I'm going to pick up just because of the other bets that I've got on the card. I'd have to put a decent amount of units on this for a return that I'd be happy with, which I'm not prepared to do. Even now I've got 4 bets on the card, but ultimately I think Alex Morono will. I think he'll finish him. I think it'll be TKO. Yeah, I think it'll be late. Burkman will get out the first round. I think Morono might finish him either late second or early third. So yeah, Morono by TKO. And then finally we've got Oskar Piechota against Tim Williams. This was another fight before I saw the lines that I was thinking about maybe betting. Oskar Piechota looked great in his last fight against Johnny Bravo, I think it was. Really put on him, but he looked quite exciting because I watched tape for that fight, and he looked quite exciting on the tape as well before his UFC debut. So I'm really not surprised what we saw inside the octagon, because it reflected what I watched in the tape previously. So now I'm thinking, okay, well, let's have a look at this Tim Williams guy. Again, really don't know that much about him, but then he's a sub guy and he's got wrestling and takedowns, and he does tend to look for him quite relentlessly as well. So instantly I'm now thinking, well, no, I can't bet Piechota. I don't like betting anybody that I know is going to spam takedowns and probably be successful with it as well. I'm not going to bet against that guy because it's just horrible watching. So then I saw the lines come out, and I think Piechota was like -275 anyway, which is completely out of range. Again, another green fighter that's got really wide odds. So my pick's going to be Piechota. I think the fight ends up on the floor. I think it'll be a bit of a mix between. I'm torn between either catching a sub or a bit of ground and pound on top, but I'll go with the ground and pound, I think. So yeah, I think my pick's Oskar Piechota to win by TKO, which does it for this card. Yeah, I'm a bit bummed I can't watch it all, but you know, it is what it is. Just a quick one. If you could subscribe to the channel, it would be really cool. I'm trying to. For start, I'm overwhelmed with all the love that I've received with the channel since I've rebranded it to Newsome MMA, and you know I've gone solo. I really appreciate it all. I'm nearly at 100 subscribers now, which is crazy to say. It's only been going on about a month or so. So obviously I appreciate everything that. The comments, the subscribes, the likes and things like that. I really do appreciate it all. I'm trying to hit my first milestone of 100, so that'd be cool if I could hit that sometime soon. I'm currently on 96, I think. So please don't be shy hitting that subscribe button. As always, you can go onto the Newsome MMA website, which is www.newsomemma.co.uk. You've got all my bet picks on there, so I've got a load of other fights. I've just added another fight for the next card onto that website with a written breakdown, so you can go on there, you can have a read. I've got a load of future fights up there, so there's always plenty of content for you to have a read on. If you like watching stuff, there's always plenty of content to watch as well. We've got the prediction videos coming from the other good guys on YouTube. I've also started doing, I mentioned in my last podcast, I'm working alongside Heavy Duty Fight Management, providing some fresh content as well. We've just got a promo video from Scott Askham in his upcoming fight against Michel Materla in KSW 42, which is going to be an absolute barn burner. Looking forward to that. We've also got the Scott's doing a 4-part blog video at his training camp over at ATT in Florida, so those videos are coming one by one on the Newsome MMA website. So go to the site. There's a featured area as well. I'm going to do, I think we've got a break in the UFC in a week or so. Once we've got that week break, I'm going to be writing an article on there as well, something that I really want to talk about. We've got content still coming from Amanda Jacobs in Australia, Stuart B in Malta. His hot takes are really funny for every card. There's not going to be one for this card, unfortunately, but they're really good reads. So listen, if you're a fight fan, there's plenty on the Newsome MMA website for you, and I'll still keep filling it with more and more content as the weeks and the months roll on, so definitely keep up to date with that. You can follow me on Twitter at Newsome_MMA. If you want to go backwards and forwards with me on a fight, always happy to have a debate. I love it. That's what that's what we're here for. You tell me why you think your fight is going to win, and I'll tell you why I think you're wrong and why my fight is going to win, and then you'll tell me I'm wrong. It's just cool. It's good fun. And yeah, if you want to see my track record, that's betmma.tips/Newsome MMA. And that's all. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.